Let's get down to Johannesburg now for more on this. As we bring on Chris Hart, he's the executive chairman at Impact Africa Investment. It's great having you on the program again tonight. Thanks for making it through, Chris. How much do we know about the meeting that was held between President Ramaphosa and ministers as well as the CEOs of big companies on Tuesday?
Well, I think the actual details still need to come out, but I think to a large extent it was the captains of industry and a lot of the important political leaders that were there that were discussing it. And there's a number of serious issues. I think, clearly with the election looming next year, I think the ruling party is starting to really worry. The opinion polls are not looking good for them. And the unemployment rate is exceptionally high. Inflation has been rising, and of course service delivery, especially around issues like load shedding and potholes in roads and quality of healthcare, service delivery in general has really been a problem, and that is the government is effectively coming under increasing criticism and skepticism because of promises made previously. And I think clearly there needs to be a business solution to get the economy going again. And these are the issues that would have been discussed at the presidential summit.
1.1% revised, negative finishing at the end of last year, 0.4% in the first 3 months of this year. So would you say that things are looking up right now for South Africa? Is it safe to say so?
No, I think sentiment has turned down in recent months. A number of issues have come through. The South African going onto the grey listing, in addition with the sanctions, rising debt levels, the fact that the economy is not growing and the actual government expenditure is growing faster than the economy and has been for the past decade, right? The GDP per capita has been coming down. Effectively, it's the hallmarks of a depression. And this is an unusual thing. South Africa stands alone with these conditions. And these are things that I think is really coming home, to a reality check, if you like, to the leaders, the political leaders, and certainly the business leaders are increasingly speaking out about these conditions because it is affecting the ability to actually conduct business. Usually business is quite, moot. They'll cope with whatever conditions are presented to them. But the conditions have actually been very difficult, and then the rising interest rates have been quite a shock, right, to the economy because they've been raised quite aggressively and quite quickly, and so we're sitting at a level where debt levels have risen, and the economy is not growing, right, to begin with, and the confluence of these factors suggests that South Africa's economy is still languishing, that the population growth is still higher than the economic growth, which has been the case, and there doesn't seem to be an out to this yet.
But Chris, maybe I come in very quickly here. Do you think the concerns around whether South Africa will be sanctioned if it allows President Putin to step on the soil of South Africa for the BRICS summit later this year, do you think that is something that chief executives, investors, and those who are in the investment market, like yourself, are looking at very seriously?
It is very serious because the sanctions, even if they're just partial, in other words, led by the US but not necessarily universally followed by our partners, is our main partners are Europe and the US, and to a rising extent China, certainly not enough to compensate for the loss of or reduction in potential European business flows and US business flows. The AGOA, don't want to say agreement, but certainly the AGOA conditions that South Africa enjoys from the US do seem to be, at risk, and that places a number of exports from South Africa into the US market at risk. And that has a serious ramification for the economy, which is not performing well. South Africa is a small, very open economy, and can scarcely afford to be battling, under conditions of sanctions. It's battling just without sanctions. Sanctions will exacerbate the conditions further and keep South Africa in recession for a long period of time.
Yes, Chris, what we got in was that supermarket in South Africa over the last 6 months had spent about 3 billion rand on diesel. Now the government is reviewing petrol and fuel prices. Is that some good news?
At least there's some good news, because the petrol and diesel prices came down yesterday. But the concern is they could have come down more if the rand was stronger. And the weakness of the rand prevented bigger decreases in the fuel price, which, even though they've decreased, they are still very high on a historical basis. And it's part of the higher fuel prices, high inflation, and higher interest rate costs, which is really squeezing consumers considerably at this stage. So yes, we're getting temporary relief, but of course, if energy prices climb and the rand continues to weaken, those decreases that we get, and the fuel prices are adjusted on a monthly basis, will reverse quickly, and the prices increase even more, going forward. So South Africa is still very vulnerable. We do need to find ways to attract investment into the economy, and that will help to stabilize the rand. But certainly policy direction is not at all helpful at the moment. Recent adoption of national health, for instance, really is not encouraging at all. So it's really we're carrying on policy down the road of policy to boondoggles, which is not helpful.
Thank you so much for your contributions on the show, as always. Chris Hart, Executive Chairman at Impact Africa Investment in Johannesburg. Have a great evening.